Welcome, everyone, to another Pollstar digital session. My name is Eric Renner-Brown. I'm editor and reporter at Pollstar. Today, we are joined by 11E1even Group's Ben Baruch and Dave DiCianni, who appear on the cover of the current issue of Pollstar. We're also joined by their clients, Greg Ormont of Pigeons Playing Ping Pong and Mihali Savoulidis of Twiddle. When the pandemic hit the US in mid-March, 11E1even Group and its clients quickly responded to the situation by launching Live From Out There, an innovative paid streaming series that united jam and jam-adjacent artists, along with non-musical programming. Live From Out There sold tens of thousands of tickets. It's grossed upwards of $600,000 a day. And now, artists including Pigeons and Twiddle are partnering with the platform to stage virtual summer tours, which we're really excited about. So welcome, guys. So glad that we were able to, have you on the cover of the current issue of Pollstar, and we're glad that you're here today to talk a little bit about all the cool stuff that you've got going.
Thanks for having us
here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So just to start off with, and anybody who's kind of tuned into Live From Out There or read our coverage is kind of well aware of it, but for any viewers who might not be well aware of it, I wanted to know if Ben and Dave could kind of, give the overview of what exactly the concept of Live From Out There was. And you guys launched it really quickly in mid-March when kind of the live industry went on hold. So can you talk about that process of launching it and why it was so important to you guys to launch it?
For sure. I can start and then Dave can chime in as well. It was pretty much March 12th that I remember the date of some of our acts just starting to get the notifications of shows looking to be canceled, and the unknown was we didn't know what was going on, but we did know that we needed to keep things moving forward for the company and for our clients first and foremost, and then we would kind of just figure it out was the idea. Is let's see what we can do to keep our bands streaming, since we were used to that already, but potentially in a new format. So Dave and I got together, and Twiddle, Pigeons, and Goose happened to be coming off of tours and having crews together, and we were able at that time to still keep them together to film some shows before quarantine got to the point where they wouldn't be able to really get together, and we're able to still do some streaming and some getting everything together to at least keep things going while they had the crews together and the bands were still able to get together. So within pretty much 48 hours after that date, we came up with a name, we came up with a website, we talked to those three bands specifically, along with Swabi, another band that we manage, about the concept and a lot of the unknown, and just started streaming. And the idea here was partnering with Sweet Relief, and we went up with Nugs because it's a company that we were all used to working with on the streaming side of things. The fan bases of these bands specifically were also used to the platform, and they were able to all get up and running with us, like I said, pretty much immediately. So the idea right away was to the first weekend, Pigeons and Goose did a stream. And then I believe it was like the following week is when we were able to get Twiddle going, along with other acts that we started to pitch the idea to, which migrated from the original concept of just getting Pigeons, Goose, and Twiddle going, along with some Swabi and a few other clients, to start reaching out to other artists that are not on our roster to talk to them about the idea of partnering up, streaming, putting together a model which was subscription-based as well as individual pay-per-view model for a 6-week period. And at that point, because we were literally just working as fast as possible, each week we started adding more and more artists to the 6 weeks programming. So obviously we called it Live From Out There. The first one we went up with, I don't really remember exactly, but let's just say it was around 15, 20 artists that were willing and wanting to get involved. We came up with a pay model, and Dave and I both felt that it was important to, do a pay model from the start for so many reasons, again, of not knowing what the future held. But if we started getting fans on board to help support artists and crew and Sweet Relief, and everybody involved that was going to be out of work immediately, and for the immediate future, that was a mind frame that we would get them in immediately versus go for free and kind of try to back up after that with a model. So it was a subscription model, which was it $49.99, Dave?
Yeah.
$49.99 for the 6-week subscription. For season 1, we kept saying more artists to be announced because, again, we were working literally after every Sunday was done. That morning, Dave and I were in an Airbnb just trying to figure out who do we book for the next weekend, try to get them announced by Wednesday or Thursday, a schedule, get them up. It was literally working in real time. But it ended up being over 50 plus artists. People could buy weekend subscriptions. People could buy individual show subscriptions. And, we did everything we can. And we believe that we saw from the numbers, after weekend 1, we were already over $100,000 gross. And we really thought that and felt and saw that our model was working to help keep artists, crew, and anyone involved, that were part of the series, getting money flowing and keeping people afloat.
Awesome. I kind of wanted to get the other, so we've got the 11/11 side behind the scenes of what it was looking like. I wanted to get, Greg and Mihali's kind of input. I know that you guys are both kind of coming off tours, I think, and can you kind of tell me from an artist perspective, what was it like to, kind of suddenly see live touring going away and to then have your management kind of coming in and saying, here's this other idea. What was that buy-in like for you guys?
Greg, you want to go or should I go? I don't know.
You said, so it seemed like you were ready.
All right. I think, we had to cancel the end of our tour. We had maybe 2 dates left. But at that time we weren't really sure what the future was going to look like as far as the rest of our booked dates. And pretty much every day after that, we got, it seemed more and more likely that touring was going to pretty much stop and live shows were not going to happen for quite a while. And I remember calling Ben and just the feeling was like, okay, it's really time to get creative and we have to obviously think outside of the box now. So what is the move here? And him and Dave had already started thinking about it, thankfully. And, they at that point sort of pitched the basic idea of this and, kind of went from there. But it was definitely a day-to-day thing right in the beginning. Everything was getting kind of ironed out quickly. And it was important to do it fast because we still were together. Our crews weren't too far away yet. We had just come off the tour. So we kind of still had that, pizzazz that bands have when they're playing or on tour, So timing was super important and making sure that it happened quick and that we kind of got on the ball then, I think was really important to the whole thing. But yeah, it was a good idea. I'm glad that it all worked out real nice.
Yeah, and similarly, we were fortunate enough to get about 22 of 25 dates completed, and it was in the final week, and this was our longest tour we had been on straight without any breaks at home. And sure enough, that Wednesday around when Ben was saying the 12th or something like that, it was right around, we're going on stage for our final week. And right before we go on stage, basketball canceled or postponed their season. And that was there was a lot of chips that fell that night. And that was a huge one. It was all right, well, if they're not having, gatherings, this could be the last show of the tour. So we might as well let it rip. And later that night at around 4 a.m., we had a band meeting, the bandmates, and had to make a very tough call to cancel those last shows. And that night, there weren't a lot of cancellations yet. And when we decided to make that call, because we had to tell the bus driver which way to drive, it was a sour tough decision. It was a very difficult decision. We felt we woke up like thinking, was that the right call? I mean, could we have done it? And when we went online, as soon as we woke up in the morning, like so many other bands had canceled. So made us feel like we kind of all made that tough decision without talking to each other, but at the same time. So it felt right. And I have to give credit to Dave and Ben because they kind of were really forward thinking right from the start. And, us musicians, we're just thinking about like those fans that missed the show that we haven't been to Atlanta in a while. We wanted to play there. And, so they were, just, I think, removed from like that like fan band, like, right. We missed them on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They were thinking months in ahead. And once we kind of could stomach that we weren't going to be playing those shows and tour was over, they also were like, they really had their finger on the pulse on how this was all developing. Because when you look at it in hindsight, yes, there was a quarantine and we all weren't allowed outside, but I've never experienced that in my entire life. And I didn't think that, like, I didn't really realize that's a thing that could happen where the government could tell you not to leave your house. And, there was every day there was new rumblings like, oh, my friend's cousin works in the department of blank. And he says that like Trump's going to, put a quarantine on the entire country. And I was like, I mean, maybe, I guess that's possible. But Dave made sure to get us, line us up with a place that we could record as many shows as like humanly possible before there's a chance that this quarantine happens. And sure enough, like right when we finished, we were not allowed to leave the house and the crew went home and we were able to get it in. So it was like pretty good fortune telling. And I know that like, you could watch the news and stuff, but if I needed to know what was going on in the country, I would just call Dave and find out. He was just researching so much, like constantly, keeping us up to date and informed. And we, it was really crazy. And the experience of streaming to an empty warehouse, which was the first thing we did, was really bizarre. But it did make me, I always thought about it once like Oculus and all these VR companies started coming out. I was wondering like if there ever be a chance where we would like play shows a half hour from home in like a warehouse and then go home and that's tour, and it's not something I want at all, but it was kind of like the future of what it could be, especially with the VR stuff where you can have more of an engagement as a fan with the bands.
Well, it is interesting because, talking, we don't have Goose on this stream because they're preparing for their virtual bingo tour that's launching tomorrow, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But talking to them, I remember they were kind of saying that physical touring is great and it's awesome, and that's the bread and butter. But at the same time, the flexibility to maybe be able to in the future be able to do things from home sometimes can present new artistic possibilities and can also reduce certain stresses for a band. So that's been like an interesting thing that's been presented here. Before I ask this next question, I did forget to say at the top that if anybody watching this has questions, you can submit them on Facebook Live in the comment section, and we will do our best to get to them. I wanted to ask, obviously it's no secret that even before COVID, couch tour was a thing for a lot of jam bands and jam adjacent bands, and those fans were kind of used to that idea of tuning in remotely to shows they weren't at. And I wanted to know how that helped you out of the gate, and like how do you create a stream? Obviously a big part of this is that it's paid. How do you guys create a stream that people want to pay for versus just because I feel like a lot of people I know just want to they'll watch a stream, but only if it's like free on their Facebook or whatever. How do you create something that people want to pay for?
Well, I think initially we kind of just followed the model we were used to. Well, for Pigeons and I think Twiddle too. Normally when we were streaming prior to quarantine, it was free, free on Facebook, and we would work with Nugs and just try to get as many eyes on it as possible. Once all of this started, we realized we needed to kind of focus on bringing money in. So it was immediately a paid thing. And I think because everyone, within 48 hours, every concert that you had tickets to for a month or longer really was getting canceled. So all of these music fans that were kind of realizing they were going to be sitting at home for a while without a live show, and we rolled out our first paid show, which was Pigeons and Goose, you know, 2 days after that March 11th, you know, when we canceled everything, everyone was willing to pay. I think we did like 3,500 people, you know, that first weekend on Pigeons and Goose, when they, you know, they were supposed to be at the Tabernacle in Atlanta, and everyone was, you know, willing. I think we charged $10, and, you know, everyone was willing to pay, because they, you know, when they're used to it being free and then all of a sudden it's gone, you know, concerts in general, everyone was very willing to, you know, to pay. And I think also just support artists in general. So it sort of like shifted. I mean, Fish and Dead and Co and all those bands, you know, they're normally doing paid streams. I think bands in the like theater, you know, mid-sized theater level aren't always doing paid streams, or weren't. And I think, you know, the fact that there were no shows and people wanted to support, you know, musicians, made it an easy shift to a paid model, you know, because we came out of the gate and we're like, we're going to charge for this.
One thing I hope people kind of realize too is, you know, when we would do free streams, it's usually at a live show, often like sold out. You know, there's you know, the overhead that it costs to put on a concert is kind of covered by the crowd, and we want to just get our music out to the world. Why not give them a free, you know, if the show's on the East Coast, let the West Coast watch, you know? But once we started doing live from out there, I hope people realize we have to, you know, rent the space. We have to get, you know, the camera crews, we have to pay our crew, and there's no tickets being sold. So it's really just a total loss if it's free. And, you know, you can do that from time to time, but, you know, same thing with our festival Home Fest, which we just did. I mean, every single one of those bands had to spend money to make that happen. You know, it's not like we can just get together, and especially when the fans deserve the production quality that they're used to and want, you know. So between all the overhead and you know, it's not our time. We'll do it for free as artists, but you still have to pay the crew and the production and stream it. And, you know, it's not free for us to put on. So I'm grateful that the fans recognize, like, hey, they want to support us, which is, you know, amazing. And they realize, like, there's a lot that goes into putting it on that's, you know, unfortunately costs a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm. So Greg, you mentioned Home Fest, and I want to talk a little bit about that. For people who are watching who might not know, Dome Fest is Pigeons' annual festival that you guys do. You've had it like in, I think, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and you've done it for the last like 10 years, I think. And this year it went digital because you couldn't. It was supposed to happen in May, I think, and you guys couldn't do it physically. So, you know, I wanted to know if you could kind of. This is one of the kind of the three examples in our cover story of you know, these virtual tours or virtual events that Live From Out There is kind of going into after having this kind of sprawling festival model, these, you know, in the spring. And, you know, Greg, I wanted to know if you could tell me how did the event go?
Oh, the event went great. It was awesome. I'm really impressed on how good it went, because it was, you know, as the band throws Dome Fest personally. So it was our first attempt to really take the reins on the virtual event with the assistance of Dave, who's been doing it with Live From Out There. And it went really smoothly. I thought that all the bands brought great production value. So all the video and audio was awesome. And as soon as, you know, Dome Fest, we were trying to maybe postpone for later in the year. And like, it's very complicated when you have a list of artists that are connected to the event, and then you're trying to reschedule a date that works for everybody with the location that works for them. And then just watching the news and how the pandemic was developing, eventually we had to make the hardest decision of our 10-year life to cancel till the next year. And instantly after that happened, we're like, okay, well, we have to do something. And if you just change the D in Home Fest to H, or from Dome Fest to Home Fest, that's boom, that we're off and running. So we decided to throw a streaming festival, and with that, we reached out to so many Dome Fest bands, ones who were going to be on the bill this year, ones who had been in the past, and even a couple who haven't been on the bill yet, but are very good friends of ours, bands we've always considered to have. And we were thrilled to see that. I mean, Dave can confirm, but I think almost every single band said, yes, we'd love to be part of it. I'm not
Yep.
sure there were almost any that couldn't do it.
Yeah,
And
everybody wanted to do it.
yeah, and you know, with Home Fest, we wanted it to be a little more than just, you know, a stream of concerts back to back. We wanted to make it nostalgic for people who are used to going to Dome Fest at the venue. So we brought in like our MC, who normally introduced all the bands, introduced Pigeons every night virtually. And we had workshops like you would have at the festival, including yoga. And our lighting guy gave a lighting workshop. And what was cool about that is because since it was virtual, he was actually able to create like a slideshow and show visual examples. And he was able to show fans how he creates his light shows from home. And I also, in my spare time since the quarantine hit, I started fooling around with iMovie and editing for video. And I was able to collect memories from our staff, memories from our artists, and memories from the fans, our flock. And kind of compiled them into like, you know, 5 or 10 minute like nostalgic videos of Dome Fest past. So there were elements of Dome Fest on your screen beyond just the music. And then as for Pigeons, you know, we had just done 6 shows for Live From Out There, so we wanted to do something different for the fans, and we kind of wanted to like invite them almost into our living room, so to speak. So we recorded in an intimate setting at the studio where we recorded our last 3 albums, Right Way Studios in Baltimore. And we kept the light show to like a minimum. At Live From Out There, we brought like a full light rig. We pretty much just played live in a warehouse for Live From Out There. So this one was more like home oriented. So we had an intimate setting for our shows. We also had each band member invited the camera into their home where they practice and showed the fans, you know, our house and where we play and how we send music to each other. And just really tried to make it a more intimate experience and kind of like behind the scenes a little bit of what, you know, they don't get to see, which is the usual huge live show and the big light show. And I hope they enjoyed that different flavor, because we wanted, you know, this is a really rare, weird opportunity to kind of pivot from the usual, and instead of delivering the same old thing on a screen, we tried to kind of make it more interpersonal and kind of give them a sneak peek of what they haven't seen before.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the event was that in kind of like Live From Out There, the festival model that you guys were doing is that you know, this brought in non-musical things. You had a cooking class with brain food, garlic grilled cheese. You had, you know, building your light show, as you were talking about. You had the yoga. You had these like retrospectives, and you know, Ben and Dave, feel free to chime in on this too. Just kind of you know, both with Dome Fest and with Live From Out There, kind of how did you guys determine that you wanted these kind of other non-musical aspects? How does that add to the event? How does that make consumers more interested in you know, subscribing?
Well, I think when you look at a festival like at Dome Fest, for instance, we have a lot of workshops. You know, there's a lot of things beyond the music that, you know, we wanted to bring into the streaming and virtual environment. And people seem to really enjoy that sort of stuff. It kind of breaks up, you know, the day, just as they would at an actual festival. You know, yoga, whatever it may be. So yeah, and Ben and I just really like food. So you know, on Live From Out There, we were just like, we need some cooking involved.
Yeah, with the cooking side of things, besides Maddie Matheson, who's obviously an incredible and well-known chef, and we thought it would be fun, you know, a lot of the artists that we know and work with, you know, have that other side to them as well. So we just thought it'd be really fun for some of, you know, the fans that only see these artists on stage playing music, this other side to them where they're actually, you know, either love to cook or actually are great chefs. And just, again, just fun stuff that, you know, fans may not, another side that fans may not know or see of the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And for Home Fest, we really thought about that fan experience. When you arrive at the festival, you're greeted by you get your wristband, you're greeted by the parking staff. So on the first day of Home Fest, you know, one of the first things that fans saw was the parking staff talking about their experiences, and all of our staff kind of welcoming you and sending their well wishes. And then what do you do next? You know, you maybe go to workshop, maybe catch some music, and you go get food. So we reached out to our food vendors from last year and the ones we were going to have this year. And that way fans could like go get a meatloaf grilled cheese and make it at home. And just kind of like, we really thought about like, all right, what is the step-by-step that you do when you arrive? And there were a few things that didn't make the video. Like we had a time lapse of our guitarist building a tent, and you know, a few things like that, you know, getting your wristband on. But we just tried to mimic the live experience at a festival as best we could. And we also know that it's not just the bands that are struggling at this point because their bread and butter is, you know, taken away at this moment. But if you could think about and sympathize with the vendors who bank on their entire summers full of festivals, and now they're kind of out of work too. So we reached out to all the vendors so we could also support our extended family. And to get them involved, I think just made it more of a complete kind of festival weekend. We even had a little like happy hour with the band so people could sort of socialize and just have a unique interpersonal experience.
Yeah. Well, so that's awesome. It's really great to hear that you know, we did the story and did the interviews for the story before the event happened. So it was TBD if how it would go off. I had confidence, but it's good to hear now on the back end that things went well. You know, moving to you, Mihali, and Twiddle. Obviously, another one of the really cool tours that 11E1even has going this summer is Twiddle's Roots Tour, which is celebrating the band's 15th anniversary, and is going to take them to some physical venues in Vermont, playing to empty rooms. Times are still a little bit weird, but physical venues nonetheless. So, you know, I wanted to. Mihali, I want to know if you could kind of tell me how you guys decided that you were going to go physical, that you weren't just going to, you know, do it from your living room or whatever.
I think we were obviously thinking about how do we like replace a summer tour or a summer full of shows. And, you know, one thing that I was thinking about was, you know, we hadn't really had any initial plans to do anything specific for the 15th anniversary, but it seemed like a good opportunity to sort of tell the story of Twiddle and how we kind of started, and you know, the bulk of the growth and kind of how the music evolved happened in Vermont. And so we thought that sort of paying homage to all of that and playing in some of the venues that we kind of grew up playing in, and also, you know, giving a lot of the backstory to all of them and some kind of memories and exclusive looks into stuff like me and Ryan's dorm room at Castleton, kind of going way back to the very beginning onward. So like each week it would progress through the years as we progressed with footage and content from those specific eras each week.
This is kind of this is maybe particularly for Dave and Ben, but you know, Mihali, if you have input, please do share as well. Just kind of, I feel like we're about to start seeing, you know, a lot more of this of bands playing physical venues that might be empty or even, you know, partially full. And I just wanted to know if you could kind of give us a glimpse into what sort of red tape did you guys have to cut through to be able to do this, because it still is you know, it still is a somewhat new idea, and obviously some of these places are still, you know, coming back online from their shelter in place. So yeah, how did you go about securing those venues for July?
I was really surprised that pretty much everybody we reached out to was, obviously there was a lot of details that Ben and everybody had to iron out to make sure everything was done properly, but almost everybody we reached out to was really excited about the idea and happy to have us, and were more than welcoming and wanting to be a part of it and help, which was really kind of amazing.
Yeah, and I was in part of this, especially with these venues, because it had, you know, a very special place in Twiddle's heart, that we are, you know, percentage of tickets are going to go help each venue and their crew, and you know, because again, the whole point of this, and you know, we keep saying this, and it is true, is, you know, we're trying to, artists, crew, bartenders, I mean, every single person has been affected by this, you know, our industry outside, you know, so anytime that we are able to go into whether, a venue and help even, give people work, whether it's our video crew, to be editing, and bring our sound guy to be able to give him more work. Like, when we told these venues, like Mihali was saying, one, they were just super excited again because, there's a lot of promoters we talked to who just haven't had anything to do because of the obvious. And anything that we can bring to them, or an idea that they can be involved with helping put on a show again, is just exciting, I think, for everybody, whether it's a security guard, a stage guy, an artist, it does, whoever that is, they're just excited to get involved in their passion again. So every venue was super excited. And again, we plan to give a percentage of tickets back to every venue that's opening the doors to us, and, and help us with this tour.
I mean, I think that's been one of the most inspiring parts of all of what you guys have been doing for me, is kind of that, obviously when this thing hit, a lot of fans, immediately identified, oh, my favorite artist isn't going to be on tour. And, for most artists, that's, a huge blow to their revenue, unless they're in that like elite A-list tier. And, but that your series has really shined a light on, these artists have this whole network and ecosystem of other people who they aren't on the stage, they aren't the ones performing, but they're just as, vital, and they make their living this way too. So, so that's been really encouraging to see. And, I think it's really cool that you guys, that Twiddle's, playing these kind of small indie venues around Vermont, just because, obviously those are the lifeblood of the industry in a lot of ways. So, how important was that to you guys that you continue to shine a light on those venues?
Well, I mean, each of these venues hold a really special place, not only for Twiddle, but us individually. Before we were a band and we were just getting to Vermont, I'm the only one that actually came up from another state. The other three guys grew up there, and they grew up going to some of these spots to see concerts. So it's a little even more than just venues that we played at and meant a lot to us as a band. I think they hold a special place as, concert goers that we were before we were kind of touring a lot. And we also know all the bartenders and the bouncers and the bar managers. All these people are people we hang out with and have grown with, and, they've gone and gotten this job, and it's been such a nice thing to grow with all these folk, but they're all hurting just as we are, and to try and think outside the box to make sure that we're giving back to, a lot of places that meant a lot to us was important.
Yeah. And to add to that, it's, I mean, in some way ironic, like I went to college in Burlington way before I even knew who Twiddle was, it was years ago. But I mean, I'm doing what I do because I used to spend almost every night at some of these venues when I was in college in Vermont. So it also, a lot of these venues hold a special place, in my heart as well, because of just literally getting so enriched every night that I could to be, seeing music in Burlington.
We've got a question from the audience. Can't wait for Roots tour. Will we see the Becker?
Yeah, the Becker's coming out for sure. Yeah, I was actually, out of all the guys in the band, I was pretty fortunate to kind of keep all my gear. Mm-hmm. My basement's just filled with old amps and pedals and whatever it was that have come off of the road with Twiddle, end up in my basement. So, as I was going through the years and looking at what I used to play, I was really able to dial in pretty much all the rigs and do a rig rundown for kind of all of it. And I think that's going to be cool because we'll be able to give audio examples of what it sounded like then through recordings, and then I'll be able to show you what was making it sound like that. So it's kind of a cool, unique look into the various tones that we've all used.
That's so fun and interesting, and a really fascinating curio for super fans. I feel like we'll really appreciate that. I know I have certain bands that evolve their sound over time that I'm a fan of, and that'd be really fascinating to me. So.
It was great for me too to be able to go back and sort of really see the evolution of my tone and sound and where I went with it. And sometimes I was like, I don't know, this sounded pretty good. Like, you know,
Any of it hard to recreate? Like, God, I can't figure out how I got that to sound like that, whatever, in 2008 or something.
some of it was like, so pedals and all that can be pretty specific as to what goes first and what goes second and how they run into each other. So a lot of the signal path stuff I really had to sort of think about just to make sure it was accurate. We have a lot of photos and old videos. I was able to like look and actually see what was, you know, on the ground in front of me. And that all helped kind of get each rig properly dialed in.
Cool. We've got another question from the audience, and this kind of is tying into the the physical venues thing that we've been discussing. Do you think when things open up and live music comes back, promoters will make mandatory streaming for shows, especially if only able to do half houses? And how will the revenues be allocated? This is kind of a Dave Ben question.
Yeah, I'd say that's for them.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to make it mandatory, like force you to stream, but I do think I know for a fact that a lot of venues are looking at this and investing in equipment. So when things do come back, you know, they can stream. Some venues have already, you know, sort of opened up and brought in, you know, artists to stream shows just in an empty room. So there will definitely be a lot more, you know, streaming going on. And I think as things slowly come back, you know, maybe we'll likely see, you know, lower capacity shows, you know, being broadcast on different, you know, platforms online. It's already, you know, kind of happening. You know, Billy Strings just announced I think like a 6-venue, you know, tour similar to what Twiddle is doing in Nashville. And there'll be a lot of that going on, I'm sure.
We apparently have several commenters. I have a feeling this is an inside joke. We have several commenters who are asking how Mihali likes his pancakes. So
the answer to that is I like them right.
You like them right.
Right. I don't like my pancakes wrong. Because who would like wrong? But really, I believe they're referring to Gubbs, our bass player's choice in pancakes, who also agreed with me that we enjoy pancakes made right. No.
You know, I kind of wanted to ask about and I'll take this as an opportunity to talk about Goose, who we said wasn't able to join us. That Goose is launching this very cool bingo tour where they're basically, in addition to several other things, they're essentially going to offer fans the opportunity to buy bingo cards and then that have, you know, various songs and antics, and they're going to have similarly on stage. They're going to have like a bingo thing where they're going to be pulling them out and, you know, audibling their set list and all that. And one of the things that's really fascinating about that is that in conjunction with your streaming partner Live by Live, you guys are having all this interesting integration of merchandise and a chat and community function and, you know, VIP opportunities. And we got, you know, some of that with Pigeons and Home Fest. We got some of that with Twiddle. I know that Mihali and I talked about how you guys might be making some you know, vintage merch re-available and that type of thing. And, you know, I wanted to know if you guys could kind of speak to the possibilities that live streaming opens up in terms of, you know, merchandising and VIP and those types of opportunities to kind of round out the experience.
I mean, and Dave will chime in after me, but I mean, it's more just been like a shift, you know. I mean, all of these bands and most bands, you know, do VIP experiences, do special merchandise for each show or tour or festival. So it was more of, you know, in my mind, you know, and I think Dave will say the same, it was just a shift. So instead of doing the meet and greets before the show in person, you know, how can we do it, you know, virtually, which we're doing. Zoom meet and greets, just like with actually all three of these acts. Merchandise, each band, you know, created, you know, unique merchandise for during Live from Out There. We did drops, you know, during their streams to make it, you know, just again feel special. Posters. So it's really just a, you know, a shift. but it's almost like more of an intimate shift in a way. And Greg and Mihali can speak on this more than I can, but sometimes in the live meet and greet settings, it's like before a show and it's quick and it's a quick picture and this and that and the other. And I feel personally, just from my Zoom calls, which obviously aren't meet and greets, but similarly where it's almost a little bit more intimate from what I'm feeling, and I think the bands may feel that as well, and the fans as well. That they're on this kind of like unique face-to-face with the bands, and as far as how things will change in the future, I just think it's potentially other ways that even when bands are on tour, that we can offer cool meet and greets, and again, merch drops is something we've always done, or a lot of us have done on the streaming. But yeah, it's really just been a little bit of a shift.
Yeah, I don't think we ever, prior to this, we weren't really thinking about utilizing the virtual kind of space in ways that we now are thinking about. So, let's say we have an album coming out and the band isn't on tour the night of the release, we could offer some sort of special, kind of sit down listening to the album with the band from home, and meeting the band, in a Zoom or whatever. There's going to be ways beyond, the pandemic that will utilize the virtual space to engage with fans in a more direct fashion when we're not, you can engage your entire fan base all around the country, which I think Mihali talked about in the interview in Pollstar. You could do it in a single night, which is there's a lot of cool ways to kind of talk to your fans.
Yeah, and I think that, so I just wanted to add to that is, obviously, I think there is some good that always comes out of the bad, and even though we're all in a crazy times and not sure what the future holds in the live experience, I've seen it with our artists, I've seen it with other artists, people are having to push themselves out of the box and maybe learn new technology for live streaming and getting new, here's mics and here's how we do this and here's how we're going to connect to our fans. And I do think in some strange way, a lot of these artists, including obviously, the ones on this call and others that we work with, are going to come out of this stronger in whatever that means. And, whether it's a deeper connection with the fans and maybe, fans that never saw a side of the artist in a way. And, there are some positives that we think will come from this strange virtual space.
I mean,
yeah,
interesting. Like one of the first artists I talked to, kind of when the crisis, started, and had just done a successful live stream, and was talking about getting feedback from fans who were in, places hours from the nearest city where tours come through, or, had, were economically disadvantaged or had a disability and for whatever reason couldn't normally go see these shows, and to suddenly have that opened up to them, it's been huge for some fans. So that's been, it's been really cool to see. Mihali, were you going to say something? I think I might have interrupted you.
Oh, no worries. No, I was just going to say that, like all the VIP experience stuff that we do on tours, sort of has to fit into a pretty tight schedule that we have for the day. Between sound check and doors is a pretty small window where a lot of like dinner eating happens and showers and the kind of like little stuff you got to do before you go on. But also a lot of that is the VIP time. So sometimes events can feel like rushed or just hurried along, because literally there's just not enough time. And Greg, when Twiddle and Pigeons were on tour together, we did some VIP stuff together, and it's just, it can be tough to have like the genuine one-on-ones that you can have in like a Zoom. Or I know Greg's done a bunch of cameos, and I'm sure he's, gotten a really great response from the fans and a more intimate connection with them through it, which is really tough to do on tour. It really is. So it's definitely opened that up, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing the VIP thing in person, there's a lot going on. You know, there's other people around. It's just distracting, and you do get to meet everyone, but it is very quick. And the Zooms that we did for Home Fest felt absurdly intimate. And not only that is, you know, when you're doing it at a venue, the people who are coming, like they're kind of out of their element a little bit, you know. But in the Zooms, they're in their home. They feel safe. All of us, you know, depending on which Zooms we were doing, we're either in our house or we're all together, and there's no distractions, and the fans can feel comfortable. And for anyone who has like anxiety meeting a musician, like I think that little barrier of the laptop made everything move more comfortably, and they just were in their element. And it was really fun. Like, I mean, normally, like Mihali said, when you do the meet and greets in person, it's fun, but it's also like it's very confined to a schedule, and there's a lot going on. And like the behind the scenes of putting on a concert is a very quick moving thing. And to have time set aside where you're not like wondering, am I going to be able to eat and digest before the show or take a shower or whatever, it just made it more laid back and more genuine. And they're both great. But like we've all been saying, I think we've kind of been forced to test the waters on how we can reach fans differently, maybe not in person. And like Mihali said, I've done like hundreds of cameos, and I've been able to like learn about our fans more and talk to them about not serious stuff, about serious stuff, and connect on a much more personal level. And like, that's just something I don't have time to do on the road. And it's nice to be able to stay connected in any way possible. And I think that's like what we're all scrambling. Yes, like from like the Pollstar management angle, it's, you know, financially you got to keep, you know, things moving along, and you can't just sit and not work, you know, like anyone. But it's also, you know, the driving force behind it all is how can we stay connected with our amazing fans who have supported us for over 10 years. And I think we've come up with really creative ways and really genuine ways to stay connected, and in a lot cooler ways than you can do in person sometimes.
You know, I kind of wanted to bring it all together here, and obviously, well, hopefully, we're pretty soon going to start seeing, you know, restrictions ease up, the roads start to open back up. You know, who knows exactly how long it will take, but hopefully you guys are back on the road for real soon. And you know, I kind of wanted to know if everybody could kind of share their thoughts about how does live streaming, whether it, you know, is a simulcast of a show with fans in a physical venue, or whether it's, you know, additional performances from your home. How does live streaming fit in for Pigeons and Twiddle and other 11/11 acts? You know, what does it look like in a year when you guys are hopefully back on the road?
I mean, I think it's something like I mentioned earlier, you know, there's interesting ways you can engage your entire fan base. So I think it's something that will become a more consistent part of what we do, whether it's streaming a show. I think, you know, for one, a lot of venues are going to have the infrastructure to stream shows, you know, moving forward. So that'll happen more often, but it'll also be something that we can utilize, you know, when the band's not on the road. And, you know, I think we intend to do that. And we have a new way of looking at, you know, streaming as a revenue model. So, you know, I see us absolutely continuing whether or not, you know, there's restrictions in place regarding, you know, live events.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel the same way. I think, you know, we're going to do a lot of the same things, which is, you know, stream our shows, you know, when they sell out, or big shows that we want more people to see, as well as, you know, new unique ideas potentially when the band's off the road. And it is nice, you know, that there are going to be a lot more, you know, I think Dave and I have always been ones that we, you know, push, you know, bring video crews to these shows and do multicam shoots, and something we're definitely used to. But knowing that a lot of venues are, you know, 100% going to now have this built into their venues, you know, it's just going to be easier to stream and, you know, pick and choose which ones we do to make special.
Greg and Mihali, how crazy is it going to be when you guys are finally able to, you know, do a proper show with like a full audience and everything? Are you guys going to be? It almost might be like system overload.
gonna be nuts.
Yeah, those first shows are going to be the parties of the year. I mean, or of the decade. I'm so excited to get back out there, and that'll always be our bread and butter because it's like an addiction. That connection with the fan, it's like this is the best high in the world, and it's something we chase. That's why we go, it's why we, wear ourselves out year after year on the road because it's just so sweet to do. And I think we'll I enjoy doing the streams. It's nothing like playing live. There's no comparison, but it also provides some flexibility when you're talking about the amount of shows that we play. I mean, Mihali and I have been playing more than 100 shows a year, probably for a decade. So to have a little downtime is great. And sometimes like for example, my wife and I just had our daughter right after quarantine. And, I had to carve out some time to be there. I'm not gonna, I love playing, but I'm not going to miss the birth of my daughter. I talk to Mihali about it every day, just preparing for it. But to have an option to stream, I can't commit. Let's say someone's having a baby or something big's happening. My sister's getting married soon. Let's say I have something near there. I can stream and be a half hour from my house, and if something happens, I drive home. But I can't commit to be across the country and do that during certain little personal moments in life, so to be able to have the flexibility to continue to play for people and potentially more people than you would live is a great option to have. And I mean, even Home Fest, one thing that was different from Dome Fest and Home Fest is I was actually able to watch some of the festival. Normally I'm running around, working like crazy. And I saw in the comments, there were people from Switzerland watching and all over the country. It's really opened up, the internet really has connected us in so many ways, and social media now streaming is getting our band out there. And maybe if we go to Zurich, someone will show up.
I mean, I think I pretty much transformed my basement into a stream or able place to do this. And between video and audio, I sort of got myself a nice little studio that I'll be able to continue to work from. And Greg was saying he got really into iMovie and started editing some stuff like that. I think those little passions that have been spawned from all of this will continue to lead to some great content that comes from us.
The other cool thing about quarantine is it's allowed us to stop and, it's hard to I mean, we always write music on the road. We have long sound checks and we're constantly working, but we're also, our time is small and few and far between. But I don't know about you guys, but we've been writing constantly, and digitally now you could share music in so many different ways to each other without even, meeting up for band practice. And it's really been a great opportunity to write and come out with more material. And that way, when we do finally return to tour, we'll have, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to have a lot of fresh material, and it's going to be exciting in a lot of different ways.
On that note, I've got a question. Ask Mihali about the new Twiddle album, 5 exclamation marks. So somebody really wants to know, is it coming this year?
We're working. We've got new songs. We've got a lot of potential goodies for everyone. Like Greg just said, we've been writing a lot and getting together and putting kind of all these ideas we've all been working on to kind of final songs. So we're super excited for what we've been working on. As for the full album, it's definitely something we're working on, and hopefully we'll get released soon. Hopefully.
Cool. Well, this pretty much, I think that we're pretty much up with our hour here, but thank you guys so much for joining. Before we leave, I wanted to know if anybody had any closing thoughts about Live from Out There or anything like that. What's in your futures, or I feel like we covered most of it.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep putting on these virtual tours as long as we have to, and then we'll do real ones when we can. But
well, good luck, you guys, and I think for everybody that it's been really inspiring to see how you guys have kind of adapted to this new normal and kind of set forth a model that I think other people can learn from, and supported your crews and done some good music while you're at it. So thank you for joining us, and anybody who wants to learn more can go check out our cover story, and good luck.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, man.